No emulators were used in the production of this podcast. That's awesome, sweetie. Thank you. Welcome to the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast, where we talk all about Atari's last home video game console and what you can do with it one game at a time. No matter your species, alien, predator, or lunch, I'm glad you're here. That is, here listening to the podcast, not necessarily here next to me while I'm recording. I am Lieutenant Shinto of the Colonial Marine Corps, and the company's requested that I brief you on your upcoming op. This mission is classified top secret, your ears only.
Is this going to be a stand-up fight, Shinto, or another bug hunt?
Neither, actually. If you want a stand-up fight, wait for episodes 13 or 14. If it's a bug hunt you're after, well, check out episode 1 of the Atari XEGS Cart by Cart podcast. They'll hook you up. Anyway, this mission is on disk, so you'd better study it. You'll find it filed under code number J9008, Alien vs. Predator. Before we get started, I feel I should warn you that this episode may contain a dropship load of references to the movie Aliens. If you have a problem with that, then perhaps you should remain aboard the Sulaco. Alien vs. Predator is a 4MB cartridge, the first 4MB cart I've covered so far, developed by Rebellion and released by Atari in October of 1994. It is a first-person shooter/survival horror game for one player and carries no ESRB rating. It was one of the last Jaguar games to be released as such. Rebellion Developments Limited was covered in episode 7 of this podcast, the Checkered Flag episode, so check that one out for more information on the company's history. American movie studio 20th Century Fox, formed in 1935 when 20th Century Pictures merged with Fox Film, produced science fiction horror movie Alien in 1979 and a 1986 sequel, Aliens.
Were there other sequels?
We don't like to talk about those. This film studio also produced sci-fi action movie Predator in 1987 and Predator 2 in 1990.
Were there other sequels?
Yes, Predators in 2010, which I think was okay. I watched it on a long-haul flight across the Pacific, and from what I remember, I think it was okay. But that's well after the Jaguar's lifetime, so we're going to limit our history to that era. The two antagonists, Aliens and Predator, in their mythology they actually go way back, as first established in the Dark Horse comics aptly named Aliens vs. Predator, released in February of 1990, and these comics inspired some video games. In 1993, Activision published Alien vs. Predator for the Super Nintendo. Activision is an American company which, you know what, just check out Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast episode 5 to learn more about Activision. This Super Nintendo game was a side-scrolling beat-em-up, first published in Japan by IGS Corp, Information Global Service, and developed by Japanese company Jorodan. In this one-player game, the player takes control of a predator and destroys gobs of aliens. Activision also published a Game Boy game in 1993, Alien vs. Predator: The Last of His Clan, developed by ASK Kodansha. Like the Super Nintendo version, this is a side-scrolling game where you assume the role of a predator taking out aliens. In May of 1994, Capcom released Alien vs. Predator in the arcades. This was another side-scrolling beat-em-up, but had support for up to 3 simultaneous players, letting you choose from 2 predators and 2 humans as your avatar, still fighting the alien horde. So when Atari sub-licensed the rights to develop an Alien vs. Predator game from Activision, that's kind of what they had in mind, something akin to the Nintendo games. Atari contracted with UK developer Images Software for the Lynx version of Alien vs. Predator. Images was founded in 1988 by Carl Jeffrey, and they did a lot of work with Activision, as well as Ocean and US Gold, porting games to such platforms as the Amiga, the Atari ST, ZX Spectrum, Game Boy, NES, and Super Nintendo. The company was renamed to Climax Productions in 1997 and then Minimum Effect before being dissolved in 1998. But I would guess it was their solid relationship with Activision which helped set up this Atari Lynx contract. The Lynx game, as I mentioned, was going to be similar to the Super Nintendo version, a side-scrolling beat-em-up sort of game. But then James Purple Hampton joined Atari, taking a job opening for producer. And among the games that Atari dropped on his desk to produce was Alien vs. Predator for the Lynx. He was excited to be working with these two characters, the Alien and the Predator, but wasn't too crazy about how they were being used in this game. Images Software wasn't opposed to scrapping the beat-em-up approach and switching to a different design, a different way to use these characters. So Hampton and Images started faxing ideas back and forth. Eventually, they came up with the idea of trying to represent the characters, the alien, the predator, and even a human, using an entirely different type of game from a first-person perspective. Since the Lynx had this awesome ad hoc networking capability called comlinks for multiplayer, they figured they could use that to have 3 people playing at the same time, one from each species, hunting each other in a maze, kind of like Faceball or Midi Maze. This would have been around the end of 1992. In February of 1993, Atari was shifting focus to the Jaguar, and still having the Alien and Predator license from 20th Century Fox through Activision, they awarded a contract at half the requested budget to UK developer Rebellion to create this game for their new 64-bit console. This version also started out as a version of the Super Nintendo game, but as Hampton dug deeper into the project, he found multiple references to elements from the comic. Atari didn't have the rights to the comic, just the characters from the movies, and that was as good a reason as any for Hampton to push for an alternative approach. So what can we do with this Jaguar version that really captures the characters? Well, it helps to know the characters. The Atari team seemed quite familiar with the Alien and Predator franchises, but the Rebellion side had not actually seen the movies, so that, of course, needed to change. Atari also brought on a specialist, a UK developer named Andrew Whitaker. Whitaker had worked with Alien designer H.R. Geiger in the PC horror game Darkseid, and his name came up as someone who would be able to help with the feel and behavior of the characters in this game. What they came up with was letting the player experience the game through the 3 different species, essentially making 3 games in one. This required a deeper understanding of the different characters' motivations and nuance, and Whitaker worked with Geiger and the creature effects department at 20th Century Fox. This also, of course, required multiple movie watching and brainstorming sessions. The Atari team watched the movies repeatedly, the Rebellion team watched the movies repeatedly. Heck, I watched the movies repeatedly, and I had nothing to do with this game. Jason Kingsley, in an interview with Retro Gamer magazine, mentioned pausing the VHS movies and then taking pictures of the screen to try to nail down the particular environmental elements. For those who don't remember VHS, when you're playing a tape and you hit pause, you typically get tracking artifacts, lines of static, on top of a blurry and or jittery image. It's not like these newfangled DVDs or Blu-rays or digital downloads or DVRs where you get a nice perfect still image when you hit pause. And what's more, TVs at the time used interlacing to display images, so you display every even-numbered horizontal line, and then when that's done, you go back through with the odd-numbered lines. Taking a photograph of that, and with the flash and the refresh rate effectively cutting off sections of the screen. Oh, and these were film cameras, so you'd have to wait a week or so to get the pictures back, probably 24 at a time. Yeah, that's rough. I can see how that would be frustrating. Fortunately, they had an ace in the hole, and his name was Sean Patton. Patton was, and probably still is, a big fan of the movie Aliens. He's credited as technical advisor and owned replica armor and weapons based off the movie. And this stuff was used in the game. He's the face of the Marine used in the game. That reminds me, I should probably talk about how the graphics were done in Alien vs. Predator. Now, when development started on this game, early 1993, first-person shooters weren't the popular, ubiquitous games that they are today, not by a long shot. They were still in their infancy, with the hugely popular Wolfenstein 3D having been released just the prior year, and Doom was still in development. The Kingsley brothers at Rebellion weren't even familiar with Wolfenstein 3D when development of Alien vs. Predator was really ramping up. They were influenced more by step-based dungeon crawlers than anything else, but Mr. Hampton, he knew about Wolfenstein 3D, having played the shareware version a fair amount. But my point here is that Wolfenstein, Doom, Catacomb 3D, Blakestone, all these early first-person shooters used hand-drawn graphics. That was pretty much how graphics were done back then with pixel artists. They tried that with Alien vs. Predator early on, 256-color hand-drawn artwork, but it wasn't very realistic. Two artists with Rebellion, Toby Harrison Banfield and Stuart Wilson, had an idea. Instead of illustrating the environments for the game, photograph them and then scan them in. Mortal Kombat, which was released in the arcades in 1991, famously used digitized characters, but it was a fairly uncommon thing in video games at this time. So instead of 256-color hand-drawn graphics, Alien vs. Predator was shaping up with 65,000-color digitized graphics. 16-bit color instead of 8-bit color. The walls, floor, and ceiling textures were done with painting, airbrushing panels, either bathroom tiles or cardboard or both. They were square tiles, 9 centimeters on a side. For my American and Liberian listeners, that's about 3.5 inches. There were around 70 panels created for this game, and this does not include overlays. There are several panels with a generic background and graphic overlays to label parts of the base, like armory, barracks, canteen, and so forth. Rebellion used compression heavily here. Each panel is compressed down around a ratio of 6.5 to 1. Otherwise, you'd fill up 2 megabytes easy just with textures. That was their original target ROM size, by the way, 2 megabytes, just like every other Jaguar game at this point. To get all these textures actually incorporated in the game, Rebellion developed what they call the Advanced Texture Manipulation Program over the course of 7 months. But once done, this really sped up the texture mapping process. And with 70-some tiles, that's a lot of textures to import. Another big consumer of ROM space was the animation. Like the wall and floor and ceiling textures, the character animation also used digitized images. The Alien, Predator, and Facehugger characters from the game were made from off-the-shelf models and photographed using stop-motion techniques for the animation. The Alien Queen, though, that's a different story. The Rebellion art department tried to mail order an Alien Queen from the States, but UK Customs blocked it. James Hampton picked up the same type of model from a Massachusetts toy store and smuggled it into the country in his luggage. Think about that for a second. Have you seen the movie Aliens? You should. Aside from Paul Reiser's haircuts, the movie holds up really well today. But attempting to smuggle an alien past quarantine is a big plot point in the movie. How can they impound it if they don't know about it? And that's pretty much what Hampton did, just instead of ICC quarantine, it's UK Customs. I find that awesome.
Doesn't that parallel paint James Hampton as the villain?
Oh no, don't let that fool you. He's really an okay guy. Alien vs. Predator was shown off at the August 1993 unveiling of the Jaguar, at Comdex 3 months later, and again at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in January 1994. The first time I saw this game in motion was in a report from the floor of the Winter CES, courtesy of Computer Chronicles with Stuart Chaffee. I'll refer you to episode 1 of this podcast where I include the audio of the entire segment about the Jaguar. These early builds of the game, as I noted in episode 1, moved with a faster frame rate, and a lot of that can be attributed to, well, lack of completion. As more was added to the game, items, enemies, artificial intelligence behaviors, that took a toll on performance, reducing the frame rate. Mike Beaton, perhaps the main developer on the project, wanted to have a maximum of around 300 objects per level, including enemy placements, items, power-ups, that sort of thing. This is going off of a document he wrote in July of 1994, providing instructions for editing placement of creatures and so forth. Early on in the development process, the level design was a pretty straightforward find the key, kill the bad guys, reach the exit sort of affair. Hampton thought the game had much more potential than that, and wanted to make it non-linear and more dynamic, probably including random elements to make the experience different each time, and more story-driven. Hampton's aim was to have Rebellion handle the code and art, with Atari taking over the level design and story. Andrew Whitaker was in charge of the feel and behavior of the AI, but I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Lance Lewis at Atari was put in charge of the story and level design. He and his team had a great deal of freedom, which was necessary in order to have a single environment and story that would work for all three species. Lewis spent about 6 months working on Alien vs. Predator, and the last half of that was pretty much straight through, 7 days a week, nights, weekends, with no days off. Hampton put in a request for the Marine in the game to be named Lewis Lance J as a kind of thank you. Lewis had the option to turn down his name inclusion in the game, but no, he's not going to turn that down. I'm including in the show notes some gameplay footage of both alpha and beta builds of Alien vs. Predator. You can see how the game has evolved, the Marine mission at least, from these early placeholder graphics, and also from some internal documents which have survived. You see things like a time limit. The Marine had different weapons like grenades for the pulse rifle, a pistol, and a knife. Characters also had limited numbers of lives. By beta version 0.93, the time limit had been dropped, and for the Marine, the knife and pistol had been dropped as well. Which is just as well. I think going up against a xenomorph or a predator with a knife would be pretty much pointless, and these two weapons were replaced with a sawed-off double-barreled shotgun and the M56 Smart Gun. Firing the grenades was originally intended to be done with the C button, but the grenades didn't make it into the final game, and I'll be talking more about how the controls turned out later. I promised some details on the game AI that Andrew Whitaker developed. In games like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, enemies are dormant until activated. They can be activated by line of sight with the player, by sound, like your nearby weapons fire, or when they're actually attacked. It's good for sneaking up on Nazis, but not what Whitaker was going for in Alien vs. Predator. No, in this game, you are being hunted. Enemies are placed somewhat randomly in a level, and they start hunting you. Aliens and Predators and Marines hunt in different ways, and each species has over 256 strategies that they'll employ. Aliens might lure you into a trap, for example. This game is often compared to Wolfenstein 3D or Doom, but it's not either of those games, and a large part of that is the enemy AI. When you're being hunted, you might want to take a slower, more stealthy approach than just busting into a room spraying bullets from your chain gun. So all these textures and digitized graphics looked great, but as you might imagine with high-color textures, they took up a lot of ROM space. As I said, Atari had requested a 2MB cartridge size. Fortunately, there was pressure both from inside Atari and from 20th Century Fox, the latter looking for additional frames of animation. So Sam Trammell made the call and bumped the cartridge size up to 4MB. Using the popular unit of measurements at the time, this was going from a 16MB to a 32MB cartridge. Not only did this allow for the extra animation and textures, but it also let Rebellion add voice samples for the station computers. The computer voice has a British accent, as all good computer voices should. Well, either British or Majel Barrett. The computer voice in the game belongs to none other than Sandra Miller, wife of Richard Miller, Atari's vice president of technology. For more about Richard Miller and his fascinating history with Atari and the Jaguar, check out episode 1 of this podcast. Another casualty of memory constraints, more RAM than ROM, I think, was the soundtrack. Yes, Alien vs. Predator was initially intended to have an orchestral score like in the movies, but once you take the textures, the clipping buffer, the graphics overlays, the weapons, the objects, the animations, there's nothing left in the Jaguar's 2MB of random access memory to fit a big soundtrack. So the development teams decided to go the other way. Rather than a soundtrack, add eerie environmental noises, ambient sounds that pull you into the game, that make you jump out of your skin when you hear a predator nearby. The lack of in-game music rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, which you'll hear about when I get into the game reviews, but I couldn't imagine this game with a soundtrack. It's a benefit, not a drawback. Rebellion lost a fair amount of time and effort trying to cram the game into a 2MB cartridge, and if they had been allocated 4MB to begin with, it would have been a smoother ride. The 4MB decision didn't come until, well, about a month before the game was sent off to manufacturing. Another time waster Rebellion had was a developer who came on to help with the game for a few months, but his code ended up being no good and Rebellion had to rip it out and start over. So let's talk about crunch time. The game was delayed repeatedly, and there was a lot of pressure to release it, to cut these features, and just get the game out the door. Small features like the whole playing as 3 species aspect. Sam Trammell ultimately resisted this pressure and gave Hampton and the others the freedom to work to make this game great. Since the game was being developed on both sides of the Atlantic, Atari brought the main developers from the UK, Mike Beaton and Andrew Whitaker, over to the States to work closely with the Atari side, which included testing and level design and audio. Artist Andrew Denton was recruited for the static artwork, of which there is a lot, for the title screen, story screens, and ending screens. Initially, the title screen was pretty basic. You had an alien egg, you had a masked predator, and that's about it. Denton used a 3D rendering program on the Amiga called Lightwave 3D to create these graphics, and his work also ended up as the box art. These graphics are displayed using the Jaguar's 24-bit true color mode. This is the longest game development history segment I've done so far on this podcast. There is an incredible amount of information out there on this game, and I wanted to get it all in there to build a complete story of the game's development. I had been in discussion with James Purple-Hampton to arrange for an interview that I could include here, but sadly that did not work out. Maybe I can do an interview-only episode in the future. I'll add that to my backlog. But now it's time, I think, to actually talk about the game. Alien vs. Predator is presented as a tactical simulator depicting the events around the fall of the Camp Golgotha Colonial Marine Training Base to try to better understand what happened there. Here's what we know. At 0913, Golgotha received a signal from an unknown vessel located within the perimeter of the Vortigern sector. The station dispatched a Chatterjee-class tug to investigate and retrieve. At 1345, after receiving no response from hailing attempts, the Chatterjee began procedures to retrieve the vessel for further examination. The vessel was docked at the service bay on sublevel 5. Station command cleared a team to enter the vessel. Station monitoring detected sidearm discharge. The base was put on condition red, intruder alert. Emergency procedures were engaged. Escape pods were prepped, and the station auto-defense systems were set on full active, zero tolerance. Command issued an all-vessel priority distress call. At 23:31, a proximity alert sounded. A new vessel approached the station, a vastly different design from the first, but still of unknown origin. This vessel must have responded to the distress call and docked itself at sublevel 1. Unknown occupants of the second craft overrode base auto-defense systems. At 23:44, the station went dark. No further transmissions were received. The company has used all available data from the Golgotha's final transmission, plus information obtained from other sources to build this simulation. It is presented through the eyes of all parties involved: humans, xenomorphs, of which we have some incomplete information, and a third species, which we are calling predators. These names come from top levels at the company, and how they know about them is beyond my pay grade. I needn't remind you that this information is top secret. Dissemination of anything I present to you here will land you in a small cell at the Yugoth Penal Colony on Aldebaran 4. If you've never had the pleasure of visiting the Aldebaran system, I'll tell you this: make sure you have plenty of sunscreen. We'll start with a marine simulation. You step into the role of Lance J. Lewis, Private, U.S. Colonial Marine Corps. Having been found guilty of striking an officer, you were sent off to a cryotube to serve your sentence. The cryosleep system, as you know, is fully automated, so when your sentence was up, the cryosleep unit opened, probably with a bing sound like an old microwave, and you climbed out. The base wasn't quite as you left it. The station staff, your fellow Marines, all dead. You were alone, unarmed, no idea of what's going on. If this base has fallen into enemy hands, you know it's your duty to stop this intruder by any means necessary, even if you have to blow up the station. But you don't have any weapons to use against this enemy, and you lack the necessary clearance to set the station to self-destruct, so you've got some work to do. You start off in the brig, located on sublevel 3. Before long, you find a shotgun on a dead soldier.
What on earth got a hold of this guy?
As you explore, you will come across computer terminals.
Computer engaged.
These provide information both about the sublevel, a diagram of where everything is located, as well as log entries. The log entries will not only tell you what happened while snoozing your sentence away, they can also provide hints about where to go to find certain objects you need to complete your mission. Knowledge is power. Use these computers.
Computer disengaged.
In this life or death struggle, you know you're going to have to search the bodies of the fallen. You will find weapons, ammo, and security cards. You start at security level 0, but you need a level 10 clearance in order to activate self-destruct. Some areas, food stores, armories, require a certain security level.
Access denied.
As you pick up increasing levels of security cards, you can start to access these areas.
Access granted.
A highly useful tool, which you should try to find if you can, is the motion tracker.
Run, but you can't hide.
This device will give you an audible and visual warning if it detects any movement within a 15-meter radius, and even works through walls and doors. It'll not only tell you how far away the movement is, it'll also give you an idea where. In addition to ammunition, you can also pick up food and med kits. You will automatically pick these up and use them if you need them, and you don't have an option to hold onto them for later use. Food will restore 10% of your total health, med kits 25%. As you progress through the station, you may find an M41A pulse rifle.
Bug soup.
No grenades, sorry. Further on, the flamethrower.
I'll tell you about killing.
It's not like the M240 flamethrower used elsewhere. It has no pilot light and fires bursts of flames rather than a continuous stream. And the biggest, baddest weapon, the M56 smart gun.
Rock and roll.
Now, how effective are these weapons against the xenomorphs? Here's an idea of how long it takes to bring one of these creatures down with the shotgun. And with a pulse rifle. With the flamethrower. And finally with the smart gun. These aliens have concentrated acid for blood. If you kill one right next to you, you'll probably get splashed. The acid will also pool on the floor, so if you walk through it, it'll hurt. Often. You'll find yourself traveling through all 5 levels of the space station, crawling through 8 systems of air ducts to reach places that are either blocked or beyond your security level. You'll need to explore both the Predator ship and the alien ship to find everything you need. You'll encounter alien eggs. If one hatches nearby, a facehugger will burst out and do what its name implies. Shake it off or die. As you make your way through the station, you may hear the Predator. He can make himself invisible, and he likes to taunt you. He's picked up some voice samples from prior contact with humans, so if you hear, or there's one nearby, be ready. You never know where they'll pop up, but they might roar at you to show how awesome they are. Be ready to run away. They don't die easily. The flamethrower is good for aliens, not so much against these predators. Those guys are tough. There are med labs on the station, and these have computer terminals which can dispense first aid. Anyone with a security level under 4 isn't trusted with self-medicating, so you'll need 4 or above to use these terminals. You can get additional first aid with higher security cards, 50% for card levels 4 through 6, 75% for cards 7 through 9, and 100% for level 10. Once you get security level 10, set the self-destruct, and then get out of there. You have 2 minutes to reach minimum safe distance, otherwise known as the escape pod. Good luck. Here are some hints for completing the Marine mission, courtesy of B. Hodges on GameFAQs. Avoid killing aliens in narrow hallways wherever possible. Try luring them into open areas first so you'll be able to avoid the acid. Elevators are the safest places to save. When you load a saved game, enemies and items will regenerate. Plan your save locations accordingly. You only have 3 save slots. Use them. Here is B. Hodges' system. He uses slot 1 only when he's in an elevator and has plenty of health and ammo. He uses slot 2 every couple of minutes regardless of location, health, and ammo. He uses slot 3 immediately after collecting an important item. To shake off a facehugger, rapidly press left and right on the joypad. The briefing room, just south of the east elevator, and the canteen, just west of the east elevator, on sublevel 3 are excellent places to stock up on health and ammo. Wait until you have the motion tracker before crawling through air ducts. Computer logs provide clues to item locations as well as backstory to the incident at Golgotha. This is not Doom. Don't be afraid to run away when things get too hot. The object is to escape, not kill everything in sight. The west elevator cannot move between sublevels 3 and 4. Do not save after activating self-destruct. If you do this and load a game, you will die no matter how much time you have left. The queen is missing, held prisoner in the predator craft. You must rescue the queen. You are part of a hive, a warrior. You have speed and multiple attacks at your disposal, and you can cocoon your enemy to generate new warriors to add to your hive. If you perish, your new warrior will hatch and continue your quest. Your life is nothing so long as the hive continues. You must continue the hive. You must release the queen. Start moving. The alien mission is perhaps the most unique, and some say the most difficult one in the game. You can't take very much damage from pulse rifles or flamethrowers, and you need to be up close and personal to attack. But you have 3 attacks. You can swipe with your claw, jab with your razor-sharp tail, or chomp with your inner set of extending jaws. And most critically, you can cocoon Marines you encounter with an attack pattern consisting of claw, tail, claw. You can walk over the Marine to cocoon him, starting the generation and maturation process that will, in a little over 2 minutes, lead to a new warrior, taking over for you when you fall. You can have up to 3 cocoons at one time, and at least one needs to be fully mature in order for you to continue on your quest, taking over at the site of the cocooning, oldest first. It takes about 3 seconds to pull off the combo attack and cocoon the Marine, so keep that in mind if you're under fire from multiple attackers. The tail attack can stun an enemy for a short time, but the jaws are the quickest means of dispatching humans. In addition to differing strength and range, there are different speeds, repeat speeds, auto-fire, if you will, for your various attacks. There's the claw attack, the inner extending jaw attack, and the tail attack. You cannot just run around holding your chomping button and hope a Marine steps in front of it. If you use any one attack too much, you will start to tire, reducing the attack's effectiveness. Your straight line speed is much faster than the Marines, and your turning speed is as well. I took some various turning speed measurements, and I'll get into those later in the podcast. You can open doors and access air ducts. You cannot use elevators or computers or human medkits. You're an alien. Think like an alien. Do what aliens do. Here are some hints from B. Hodges on GameFAQs. You are going to die a lot. This does not mean you're losing. It is important not to get discouraged. This is a battle of attrition. The idea is to use your endless army of alien warriors to overwhelm your foes. There are no enemies inside the air ducts. This makes them great places to save and or wait for cocoons to gestate. Aliens cannot use elevators to change levels, but they can still open and close the doors and use them as save points. Speed kills. The alien is far and away the fastest character in the game, so use that to your advantage. Quickly close in on your foes and dispatch them before they can react. Or if you find yourself in trouble, make like Forrest Gump and run like heck. Use your cocoons wisely. For the early levels, I recommend keeping 1 cocoon in reserve at a time, otherwise you'll have to do a lot of backtracking later on. Our final playable character is Jonesy the Cat. Your job is to sleep 20 hours a day, put up with being banged around in a cat carrier, and hiss when aliens are nearby. And if that doesn't sound like much fun, you can play as the Predator instead. You are the fearsome Predator, and this is your trial of honor. To achieve a favorable judgment of the Elders, you must infiltrate the space station, lay waste to the alien warriors, and claim the skull of their queen. Let no creature stand in your way. You must fight with honor, and in doing so earn the weapons befitting a warrior. You start off with your cloaking generator, which renders you invisible to the inhabitants of this station, but not to the aliens infesting it. You have your audio waveform analyzer to pick up on sounds of nearby enemies. And your sole initial weapon is the pair of retractable blades attached to your wrist. Your activities are tracked. You will gain honor points for hunting honorably. Do not take a life while cloaked, or you will lose honor points. Only by demonstrating honor are you allowed other weapons. When you earn new weapons, you will laugh. When you lose them, you will yell. At 150,000 honor points, you gain the combi stick. Like the wrist blades, this is a melee weapon, but gives you a little more range and power. At 350,000 points, you gain access to the Smart Disc. This is a ranged weapon, thrown, and during the Trial of Honor you do not have to retrieve the disc, but instead have a large number of them at your disposal. Finally, at 750,000 points, the Shoulder Cannon. This is the most powerful long-range weapon in your arsenal and is the only way you are likely to take the life of the alien queen. It will kill and pass through any creature in your way, multiple creatures at a time, until it hits a station bulkhead or other physical barrier. Anything near the target will also be damaged, including you, so best use it in open areas. Fighting with honor will earn these weapons, and fighting without honor will take them away in equal amounts. There is an enhanced penalty for using ranged weapons while cloaked, double in fact. So yes, you will be killing scores of humans and aliens, but you don't need to be a jerk about it. As with the alien, you have effectively unlimited use of your available weapons, but repeated constant use will reduce their effectiveness. While you are invisible, you can choose from one of 5 different wavelength ranges in your multispectrum filter: thermal, infrared, electromagnetic, ultraviolet, and night vision. Find the one that works best for you depending on where you are and what you're hunting. You can make use of human food and medkits, pick them up, and use them when needed to restore health. You can also open doors and use elevators, but the Predator cannot access air ducts. They're too small for him. Once again, here are some of B. Hodge's hints from GameFAQs. The audio waveform analyzer is pretty much useless. It's a poor man's motion tracker and is always picking up the background noise. Ultraviolet, with a pinkish hue, is the spectrum of choice when hunting in the sublevels, with the exception of the med labs. He recommends night vision, the greenish one, inside the Predator ship and in the med labs. The thermal blue filter doesn't work very well, not like in the movies. He considers the Smart Disc to be the best weapon in the game since it can take out humans and aliens alike with one hit. Be patient, particularly in the early going. Wait until a Marine's patrol route separates him from a group before attacking. Be careful when attacking aliens. If you are too close when they die, you'll take damage from the acid blood spatter. Even though the aliens can see you while cloaked, you will lose honor points for attacking them while invisible. To shake off a facehugger, rapidly press left and right on the joypad. The safest place to save your game is inside an elevator. The west elevator cannot move between sublevels 3 and 4. Be careful when using the shoulder cannon, especially if you're in confined areas. Do not attempt to confront the alien queen until you have unlocked the shoulder cannon. Alien vs. Predator makes good use of the Jaguar's gamepad. The game shipped with 3 overlays, one for each character. These overlays have nice artwork and pictorial representations of the keypad buttons. The manual contains scale images of these overlays, and you can find them on Atari Age if your loose copy of Alien vs. Predator came without. I'm going to be referring to the keypad buttons by number here as I go over the controls. There are commonalities between the different character controls. There are several differences as well, so I'll go over each character in turn. First though, here are the controls that are generally consistent. The D-pad up and down will move forward and backward, respectively. Left and right will turn your character in those directions. The pause button will pause the game, and while paused, the option button will bring up some options. First among these is a slider to control the intensity of the heads-up display. Adjust it to suit your preferences, and you can even turn it off. This affects the map as well, and word of warning, even if the HUD is off, the game will still internally render the map, which will affect your frame rate. If you're playing with the display off to maximize immersion, make sure you remember to turn your map off as well. The paused options display is also where you can save games. There are 3 slots that you can use, 3 total slots for the game, not 3 slots per character. Saving a game will remember your position and your score. For the Marine, it also tracks your security clearance, health, weapons, and ammo. The Predator retains his arsenal and medpack reserves. The Alien retains the quantity, location, and status of gestating alien warriors. Note that I did not include any enemy status or item placement in these lists. Items, medkits, food, and the like return. The enemies especially reload when you resume a game. It's like hitting the reset switch when you play Adventure for the Atari 2600. The enemies return and resume their hunt. If you don't get my Adventure reference, then please check out episode 15 of the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast and actually try the game. You're missing out. While paused, you can also hit 1 and 3 simultaneously on the keypad to remove the paused graphic, which is good for screenshots and fairly consistent among Jaguar games. Holding down star and pound will reset the game to the title screen. From the title screen, if you hold down star, pound, and option, you can reset the cartridge EEPROM, wiping out high score in saved games. I actually tried this out for the first time in my 21 plus years of owning a Jaguar. I was disappointed to find when I plugged in my cartridge to prepare for this episode that all my saved games and high scores were gone. Even worse, any new scores or saves no longer persist across reboots. So I thought I would reset the EEPROM in the off chance that I would be able to save games again, but no such luck. This is the first and only example I have of losing Jaguar cartridge EEPROM data. Though so many of these games I haven't played in a long time, so maybe I'll find more as we go along. I'm all depressed. Let's get back to the controls. The 7 and 9 keys will strafe, sidestep, left and right respectively. The 8 key will toggle the map. Digging into the Marine's controls, the A button will open and close doors, enter air ducts, and use computers. It's also how you use elevators. You face the back of the elevator where the buttons are, you hold A, and press either up or down to change sublevels. The B button fires your current weapon, if it's not out of ammo. Oh man, that's a sound you do not want to hear when you're swarmed. Holding down the C button while pushing left or right on the D-pad will strafe, or sidestep, left and right. Buttons 1 through 4 on the keypad will switch between the weapons: shotgun, pulse rifle, flamethrower, and smart gun in that order. The alien controls are simpler. The A button can open and close doors and enter or exit air ducts, but is also your claw attack. The B button is your biting attack, and the C button is your tail attack. You can hold these down, and probably should until they land on a target. That's it. You can't strafe with the C button. You'll have to use the keypad 7 and 9. Or if you have a Pro controller, X and Z, I believe will do the same thing. The Predator has the most complex control scheme. A will open and close doors and use the elevators as I described for the Marine. B uses your currently selected weapon, and holding C will strafe when you hit left or right on the D-pad. 1 through 4 will select the weapon, combi stick, shoulder cannon, smart disc, and wrist blades in that order. That's kind of a strange order. I wonder why they arranged it that way. Maybe because the melee weapons are closer with the left thumb and the range weapons with the right, but it's not symmetrical. Anyway, the 5 button will heal you from your medkit reserves if you have any. Hold the button down to continue healing, but be aware that holding down the button when you are fully healed will waste the reserves. The health pack will flash when this happens, so please dose responsibly. The option button will toggle invisibility, and while cloaked, you can change the multispectrum filter with the 6 button, cycling between the 5 options. When you boot up a game, before seeing anything else, you get the heartbeat. The Lightwave rendered artwork appears on the screen showing the Predator jamming a combi stick into an attacking alien in front of some unhatched eggs. The alien logo will slide in from the right, scaling back as it takes its place in the top left corner. The Predator logo appears within center and outward rolling transparency animation and moves up to the top right, thus revealing the full title of the game. Below all this, in the fine print, is the licensing information. Copyright 1994, 20th Century Fox, used under sublicense from Activision, copyright 1994, Atari. After a few seconds, the background will reduce in brightness and the menu will appear. From here you can choose Select Character to start a new game, Restore Game to load an existing saved game from one of the 3 saved game slots, High Scores to view the high scores, which are combined across all 3 species. A maximum of 5 high scores are shown. The different characters are rendered in different fonts. By default, the high score list shows the names of the development staff. You have Mike, for the lead developer, Mike Beaton, at the top in the Marine font with 1.22 million points. Andy, for Andrew Whitaker, I'm assuming, is the Alien font with 800,000 points. In the middle, Purple, for producer James Purple Hampton in the Predator font with 600,000 points. James, for James Grunke, who worked on sound effects and music on the Atari side, in an Alien font with 400,000 points. And finally, Keone, for Keone Las Banos, one of the game artists, in a Marine font with 200,000. In the back is an embossed graphic showing one of the game species depending on who you most recently played as. I think Alien is the default. You can hit the fire button to return from the high score screen. It won't return on its own. Finally, from the main menu, you can view the credits, which scroll quickly but take over 25 seconds to complete. There are a lot of names on here. And you can actually hit pause to pause the list at any point. Hitting a button will take you back to the main menu. If you don't select anything from the main menu after around 12 seconds, the story mode starts. This is presented as a series of 8 slides, 6 of which use lightwave rendered graphics. The story recounts the last transmission from the Golgotha training base, rapidly typed out in a green terminal font. After the story completes, the title sequence resets. That's it for the attract mode, no gameplay footage is shown, but I still think this is pretty effective. The graphics are great, and it imparts an air of mystery and suspense. When you start a game, you are presented with a character selection screen. This is shown as a carousel interface, each species moving to the foreground in turn as you move the D-pad left or right. It shows the character on a plain background, a color gradient, with the alien's background blue, the marine green, the predator red. When you hit a button to select the current foreground character, the image will scale in, becoming larger, and as it does so, the color gradient background fades into a rendered image appropriate for the character. It's a neat effect, looks awesome, and adds a level of polish to the game. In front of this image will appear the simulation loading text, which sets up the basic story for that character. For the Marine, it says, Security Brig 01 auto-engage, cryo sentence for 9126X complete. Prisoner name, Lewis Lance J. Offense, striking an officer. Security card level, 0. Sentence deemed satisfied. For the Alien, Queen is gone. Find Queen. Rescue. Cocoon's vital to survival. Cocoon enemy with claw, tail, claw. And for the Predator, claim the skull of the alien queen. Attack when visible to gain honor and points. Lose points by killing without honor. Points gain access to superior weapons. All 3 of these will say loading simulation at the bottom, and when the starting level has loaded, press fire. The ominous background note and heartbeat continue until you do so. I like these screens. They set you up for the game in brief, character-appropriate ways. The Alien, for example, has a Hive Instinct sort of feel, the Marine like an automated computer system. And the loading simulation text is one of several clever ways that the game masks the dull task of loading the level and objects into memory. Elevators do this by virtue of being slow, industrial-sounding contraptions. Airlocks do this through the need to pressurize. And air ducts, well, I guess it takes a while to open the panel. The heads-up display differs appropriately depending on the character. The Marine has a green display framed in straight lines. You see his face in the top left corner, the current security level below that. If equipped with the motion tracker, that appears in the bottom left corner. The motion tracker is like a 360-degree radar scope with you in the center. Lines radiate out, and the source of the movement will show up as green globs. A distance to the nearest source is shown at the bottom of the tracker. At the very top of the HUD, you have your score. In the top right corner is your health, shown as a linear bar with the word energy inside it. It depletes from right to left and starts flashing when it gets too low. Along the right side are your weapons, dim if you don't have them, lighter if you do, and the currently selected weapon is highlighted. Above each weapon icon is an indication of its available ammunition, as a linear bar that reduces as you shoot in a manner similar to that of the energy bar. Each weapon also has a number next to it, indicating the number on the keypad in case you don't have an overlay, which is a nice touch. The alien's display is blue, framed in bones and slime. The alien's ugly mug is in the top left corner, and below that, arranged vertically, will be the status of any developing alien warriors to take over when you fall, with the oldest and most mature at the bottom. There are 16 frames of animation that indicate the stages of development, and as I said, they take a little over 2 minutes to mature. The score is top center, and the top right is your health display. The health display has a cool little liquidy animation within it, sloshing back and forth. Along the right side are pictures of your various attacks, along with a button letter that activates them. Above each of these is the strength meter. They reduce in effectiveness when the linear bar runs out, and regain effectiveness with rest. When you attack a Marine with a claw-tail-claw pattern, the screen will flash Cocoon the enemy, and if you're not maxed out on gestating alien backups, you can walk over the poor Marine to encase him in a cocoon and start a new alien backup. The manual says this immobilizes them for a facehugger to come by and implant an embryo down their throat, but in the game it seems a bit more like the alien life cycle in the original shooting script for the movie Alien. There's a deleted scene from Alien where you see two of the human characters partially converted into eggs, and that's kind of what the cocoon thing appears to be. Now, James Cameron, in the 1986 sequel Aliens, didn't use this original life cycle because it was not in the final cut of the original movie and is therefore not canonical, so he went with the alien queen laying the eggs, which contain the facehuggers. I'd like to think, and this is my own fanboy rationalization, that both life cycles are not incompatible. Perhaps in the absence of a queen, the aliens are able to use this cocooning process to perpetuate the species. And remember, the queen is missing in the game, so there you go. The gestation in the game is considerably faster than what was indicated in the deleted scene from the first Alien movie, but still, I think it works. Now for the Predator's display. He's got a lot going on. His orange-framed display shows his helmeted face in the top left corner. Below that, your health reserves, represented by some sort of storage device, which appears dim when empty. There's also a bar below that, indicating your health reserve quantity. There's a number 5 next to this so that you know which button activates it. In the bottom left corner is your audio analyzer, a vertical waveform. Closer sounds cause the waveform to move more erratically. Top center is the score, in a Predator-like font. And top right is your health display, shown as a horizontal bar with an animation depicting something like 2 rectangles at opposite ends of an oval moving foreground and background. Your weapons are along the right edge. They are faded out, if unearned, and highlighted when activated. The combi stick, shoulder cannon, disc, and wrist blade are shown from top to bottom with the numbers 1, 2, 3, or 4 indicating the shortcut button on the keypad. At the very bottom is the invisibility display. It has an O next to it so that you know to hit the option button to activate. It's not a 0, it's an O. The icon lights up as your cloak engages. The 6 button will cycle through the various visual wavelengths, and option again will disable the cloak and return your vision to normal.
From the Atari 1700 Game by Game podcast and the No Sir Gamer on YouTube, I am the No Sir Gamer, and you're listening to the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast
with your hosts Shinto and Bishop.
So let's see what Shinto has to say today. Go get him, Shinto!
Alien vs. Predator takes place in a 3D environment. Well, I believe it's technically referred to as 2.5D because objects or levels cannot exist on top of each other. The sprites in the game, all the objects and enemy graphics, are two-dimensional, but for some of the moving objects there are enough frames of animation to see them from different angles. Marines walking around while you're hunting them cloaked, for example. But you'll notice that some objects, crates, dead bodies, med kits, and other items, they're always facing you no matter which angle you approach them. You'll see similar behavior in other 2.5D first-person games like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom. Alien vs. Predator is a lot like Wolfenstein 3D in that it is laid out in a grid pattern such that all the walls are orthogonal, they meet at right angles. Unlike Wolfenstein 3D, of course, the floors and ceiling are textured, and there is, I believe, better fading to darkness off in the distance. The frame rate in this game is inconsistent. In the original Quake game for the PC, there was a command that you could run from the console called Time Refresh. You pull down the console, type in Time Refresh, hit enter, and the game will stop. Your point of view will perform a 360-degree spin, and the console will output how long that took, calculating your frames per second. I wanted to see how various factors affected the frame rate here in Alien vs. Predator, so I did something similar, though admittedly less precise, spinning around 360 degrees on the spot with a stopwatch. Here's what I found. Is the Marine in the middle of a moderately sized room. It took exactly 4 seconds to perform the spin. If I turn on the map, it's 4.6 seconds. It slows down if you're right next to a wall, obviously taking longer to draw the texture in full detail. 5 seconds with no map next to a wall, and 5.6 seconds with a map. Turn on the map and the motion tracker, and you're up to 5.7 seconds for the same 360-degree spin. The Alien was a bit faster. In the middle of a room without a map, 3.6 seconds. The map and the motion tracker are very helpful with cool effects, but they do have an undeniable impact on the frame rate. In a long, narrow corridor being attacked on both sides by aliens, to kill the one in front of you and then take almost 3 full seconds to spin around to get the one behind you, that's a bit too much. There are 5 different ambient background sounds in the game. Sublevels can have one of 2 sounds. The air ducts have their own background noises. The alien ship. And the Predator ship. These are pretty effective, I found, in adding to the suspense in the game. But despite the immersive sound in Alien vs. Predator, it is not presented in stereo. There is no separation between left and right channels, which would have been great to let you know if you're being attacked from the left or from the right. I performed a controlled test and looked at the waveform closely, just to be sure. Aside from dying and ending the simulation early, there are 4 total endings in this game. 1 for each of the characters winning, plus an extra one for the Marine if he doesn't make it to the escape pod in time. Some people might want to experience the endings for themselves and don't want to learn about them here, so Bishop, activate spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. If you wish to avoid spoilers, skip ahead 3 minutes 13 seconds on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
We'll start with the Marine. Once you activate the self-destruct sequence from the Sublevel 2 command center, alarm klaxons will sound, and you'll have 2 minutes to reach the escape pod on Sublevel 5.
Self-destruct sequence enabled. Computer disengaged. 2 minutes.
The remaining time will be shown in the center of the screen, along with the text, Evacuate Base. You'll get a 1-minute warning.
1 minute.
And then a final countdown. No, not that one. This one.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
If you haven't made it in time, the station will explode and the final theme song will start. You will see this text. Sector time 21-12-53, 5SC-2330. USCM sensors detected the destruction of training base Golgotha. No escape pods were launched. If you make it to the escape pod and activate the pod's computer, you'll get a slightly different final countdown. Stop that! Like this.
Computer disengaged. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This one shows your pod escaping the station in 3 rendered images as the text appears, each countdown number spelled out, down to 0 when the station explodes. After several dramatic seconds, another rendered graphic shows the escape pod being picked up by a transport ship. It shows this text. Sector time 21-12-53, 5SC-2330. USCM Transport IRATA report follows. Retrieved escape pod from Golgotha Training Base. Another rendered image showing a departure angle of the IRATA shows this text. 1 survivor, Private Lewis. Medical condition, under evaluation. Physical condition, stable with the exception of minor stomach discomfort. And that's it. There might be some subtext here, some minor Easter eggs. The name of the transport ship, IRATA, is obviously Atari spelled backwards. The sector time of 2112 may be a Rush reference. And the minor stomach discomfort, is that just nerves and stress, or was one of the facehugger attacks successful? Moving on to the Alien, near the bow of the Predator ship you will find your Queen surrounded by an energy field powered by 4 generators. Once you take out these generators, the Queen is free, and you win the game. You get a rendered image showing the Queen's lovely face surrounded by 2 drones, and this text. The hive is whole again. Expansion continues. Cheerful. On to the Predator. You'll find the Queen within the center of the alien ship, in the one part of the game rendered without a roof, giving it a cavernous appearance. Once you take down the Queen, you will see a rendered image with you standing victorious with 1 foot on her oversized skull, surrounded by your fellow Predator buddies cheering you on. Large text in the middle says, "Honor is yours."
End of spoilers. The remainder of this episode is certified 95% spoiler-free.
The ending music is actually about 4 minutes 15 seconds long before it repeats. Maybe I'll stick that at the very end of this episode, if you're curious.
Make that 82% spoiler-free.
Yeah, well. There are some cheat codes and a couple glitches that you can exploit. The first cheat code is called Hold That Fuji, and it gives your character weapons and ammo. To activate, hold pause and option, and keep them held down. Press 1 and 3 at the same time, and then release them. Then press and hold 2, 5, 7, and 9, all still while holding pause and option. The Predator laugh will confirm correct entry. With this code active, you hold option and press a key on the keypad to give you various goodies. Option and 6 will raise your security clearance. Option and 9 will lower it. Option and 8 will toggle the motion tracker. When you disable the motion tracker, it will remain on the screen, just inactive and frozen in time. Option and the number 1 through 4 will toggle your access to that weapon. This is good for the Predator too. You can refill your ammo for all weapons by holding Option and the numbers 1 through 4 at the same time. It might not work for you on the first try, but it's good. The next cheat code gives you everything that Hold That Fuji does and more. It's known as banana stops because that's kind of what it spells. Press and hold pause and option, press 6, and then press 1 and 3 together. You can then release these buttons and enter the following sequence. BA9A9A star option 6 pound star option 2 option. If this works, the Predator is amused. In addition to the Hold That Fuji key sequences, you can toggle God mode with option and 5. You will lose health but never die. The screen will say cheat mode on. You can travel between levels by holding option A to go up and option B to go down. This code is the only way you can get the Predator into the air ducts, but I'm not sure why you'd want to. They're quite empty. One last code, but not as much of a cheat. Hold pause. While holding pause, hit option, and then 1 and 3 together. You'll hear the shotgun action cycle. Finally, hit option again, and you'll hear the shotgun fire. This will show your coordinates in the game, decimal X and Y for the grid, and hexadecimal X and Y with subgrid resolution. You'll also get the level number denoted with the lowercase l and the number 1 through 5 for sublevels 1 through 5. Levels 6 through 13 are the different air ducts, 14 is the alien ship and its connected airlock, and 15 is the Predator ship and its station airlock. Let's talk glitches. You can freeze the Queen in place by saving the game while you are inside her cavernous lair. When you reload the game, the Queen will be frozen. Unlike many other entities in the game, she is proximity triggered, and the trigger is in the doorway. You can wail away with your weapons, sufficient to destroy her, and she'll just sit there and take it. And when you walk through the doorway to activate the trigger, that will activate the death animation.
I'm going to step in with a spoiler alert here, too. If you wish to avoid spoilers, please skip ahead 26 seconds, now.
There's a similar trick with certain predators if you're playing as the Marine. There are predators waiting to ambush you when you pick up the smart gun. The smart gun is the trigger, at which point they decloak and attack. But you can still shoot them before picking up the smart gun if you know where they are. You'll see blood when you score a hit. Put enough rounds into them, and when you pick up the smart gun, they'll activate, immediately moving to their death animations.
End of spoilers.
If you're playing as the alien and you activate the Banana Stops cheat mode, you can instantly end the game by creating a cocoon, waiting for it to mature, allow your alien to be killed, and while the cocoon is hatching, skip a level with option A or option B. You'll get the alien ending. There are some collision detection problems I noticed. Certain ranged weapons may get snagged on walls that should be able to clear. This is especially noticeable with the Predator's disc. The disc can also seem to pass right through nearby aliens. Maybe it's just going through their legs. And finally, there are some AI limitations here. You can easily trick Marines into shooting each other, just line them up, and if you're close enough, they'll shoot at you, no matter who's in their way. Also, you'll notice arch-enemies coexisting, like facehuggers and Marines in the same room. If they were left to their own devices, these two enemy species may attack and kill each other, leaving you to explore largely empty levels with enemy bodies strewn about. That's not much fun, so they were left able to coexist, and you'll have to suspend disbelief for a bit. The box features the rendered artwork from the title screen, a closer view, and it looks great. The screenshot on the front of the box shows the Marine mission, with a couple aliens on the screen, one about to claw you. The screen is actually from the beta version of the game. If you look closely, you'll see grenades below the pulse rifle, and the double-barreled shotgun is the first weapon. The back of the box shows 4 more screenshots, one from the alien view with 2 gestating aliens and 2 Marines gunning for you, one with the Marine view showing 2 dead aliens and a Predator either cloaking or decloaking, and another Marine view showing the air ducts with aliens crawling toward you, and finally a Predator view, having just killed a Marine with 3 more on the floor. The Marine and Predator views are definitely from the beta version of the game. The alien might be as well. The text on the box is in English, German, and French. The English version has the headline, "Hunting Season is Open." Below that is this text. Choose your weapon and brawl with the notorious warriors of the big screen. Commission the Colonial Marine and use your weapons and your wits to destroy the base and survive. Be the alien and use your voracious instincts to defend the hive and rescue your queen. Or play as a predator and use your grisly arsenal to acquire the ultimate trophy, the skull of the alien queen. The manual is a 33-page stapled monochrome booklet, very detailed with scoring tables, screenshots, entity graphics, overlays, controller diagrams, even a basic diagram of the station. Chris Hudak and Lance Lewis did this manual, and I think they did a great job. What can I say? I like good documentation. The cartridge itself has a portion of the box art on the label, and that's about it. Not much else to say there. The Atari Age High Score Club has the following scores for Alien vs. Predator. Is the Alien, Avery Blue Monkey, has the high score with 3,320,000 points. Is the Marine, Tweety, holds the high score of 16,559,000 points. As the Predator, Kevin Cal, has the high score with 1,551,200 points. As I said, my cartridge lost any high scores I had saved on it, so I can't see how my scores, or my brother's scores, for that matter, compare. Suffice to say, they don't touch these Atari Age high scores, though. Reviews for this game were generally very positive, but some reviewers just didn't get the game and scored it very low as a result. We'll start with Electronic Gaming Monthly. The 4 reviewers of EGM gave Alien vs. Predator the following scores out of 10. 7, 6, 5, and another 5. On the high end, the 7, Danyan said, "This puppy has been in the works for quite some time now. AVP is a good take on the growing first-person perspective kill-everything games. Being able to play as an alien, predator, or a marine tremendously helps the replay value. However, the drawbacks come in the form of choppy animation and frequent cheap hits. The levels are huge, which is also a big bonus, but there aren't enough items to interact with." Ed, who gave the game a 6, says this, "I'm a big fan of the Alien and Predator movies, and this game's graphics are good enough to put you right into the game. Unfortunately, the gameplay was not very well thought out. You almost always take a hit when fighting, and you can't jump over acid. Why do the aliens leave all the bodies around? That's not like them. Where's the music? Is it an option I missed? It's okay as far as I'm concerned." And Sushi X, who gave the game a 5, says this, "I like the whole Alien and Predator idea, but this doesn't reflect the action of the comics or the other games. The green drab doesn't really catch your eye, and the weapons aren't very impressive. This doesn't seem to capture the elements of Doom or Wolfenstein that became instant computer classics. It doesn't have an addictive quality to the levels, although it does have big levels to map and explore." I read EGM's reviews when they came out, and I wrote them an angry letter. I still have most of my documents from back then, but that letter apparently isn't among them, unfortunately. It's clear that EGM's reviewers just didn't get it, especially Sushi X, who seemed to completely miss the point on pretty much every level. So let's take a look at Die Hard Game Fan magazine. All 3 reviewers gave the game 98%. A couple choice quotes. "It's not a walkthrough 3D shoot-'em-up. You have to think and map or you will die. I can't believe it's a 16 meg cart. Well, you're right about that, Mr. Goo. It's a 32 meg cart. Video Games Magazine gave it 9 out of 10, saying it's an experience you will never forget, well worth the long wait. Next Generation Magazine gives it 4 out of 5, saying it's the best Jaguar title they've seen so far. GamePro's scores average 4.5 out of 5. I can't find a copy of this magazine, so I'm afraid I don't have more detail than that. The reviewer closes with, "The end result is an in-your-face contest and durable gameplay that doles out a great deal of entertainment. A grin crosses your face just in time to have it flicked off by a speedy alien attack or a whole battalion of soldiers backing you into a dead end. If Atari can turn out a dozen more games like AVP, Jaguar owners can truly rest easy and enjoy their purchase. Until then, go forth and prevent creatures from multiplying. Edge Magazine, 4 out of 10. Obviously not getting it. The reviewer says that Alien vs. Predator is, and I quote, a lumbering, lame, and unfocused imitation of Doom that only the most masochistic gamers will get anything out of. Games World came in with 75%, Games Master at 95%, and Game Informer with 9 out of 10. I was delighted to receive scans of a French-language magazine, Console, I believe it was called, from Guillaume Dupré, from whom we'll be hearing in listener feedback. They have a pretty granular rating system, and gave Alien vs. Predator the following ratings. Presentation, 88%, graphics, 94%, animation, 90%, music, 85%, sound effects, 90%, replayability, 95%, controls, 90%, and overall, 95%. They close with Alien vs. Predator with spectacular graphics. Wow. Et le millier d'action sur console jamais paru is the best action game ever released on a console. Finally, Atari Explorer Online, Volume 3, Issue 12 for October 1994 contains a review of the game by Tim Wilson. He praised the atmosphere, sounds, and intensity, but was not fond of the persistent acid pools, the restored game resurrection, and the lack of cardinal compass points on the map. Yeah, that would have been nice. Aliens and Marines in the same room, and Marine-friendly fire that I mentioned earlier. Overall score, 9 out of 10. For a more recent take, let's take a look at the Atari Age external reviews. There are 8 reviews, with a high of 100% and a low of 90%, for an average of 96%. On Moby Games, which has a combination of modern and back-in-the-Ferg ratings, has a combined average of 83% out of 22 ratings. 16 of those ratings are at or above 90%. 3 are between 75 and 83%, and 3 are below 80%. Electronic Gaming Monthly, Edge Magazine, and GameCola.net, which gave it 20%. GameTrailers.com in 2008 ranked Alien vs. Predator among the top 10 scariest video games, one of only 2 titles prior to 1996 to have appeared on that list. PrimaGames.com put it at 29 in the top 50 scariest video games of all time. It's not scary, rare, or expensive, but not cheap or common either. Alien vs. Predator has a rarity of 4 out of 10 on Atari Age. On eBay, I see recent sales of loose cartridges around $20, though several as high as $50. Complete in-box copies have gone for $60 to $80. A brand new factory-sealed copy went for, my goodness, $280. These are sales, not just listings. Best Electronics has it listed with overlays for $45, without for $40. The Goat Store has a complete copy with a poor box for $60. The game sold well for Atari and the Jaguar. It was the pack-in title for the Jaguar's Japanese launch, and, as I mentioned, strongly endorsed by the gaming media, aside from a couple edge cases. Get it? Edge cases? Yeah. Anyway, in February of 1995, the development teams put together a document detailing proposed enhancements for a CD-ROM version of the game. Here are some of those enhancements. Updates to the game engine to make it superior to Doom and Doom 2. The screen should move slightly up and down when walking. Stairs, pits, variable height ceilings, windows that can provide a view outside, hidden doors, enhanced lighting effects like being able to flip on a light switch, fog or other atmospheric effects if possible, like a mist covering a room filled with alien eggs. They would keep the existing textures but add more types of doors, computers, control rooms for both the alien and predator ships. More animation, bumping up the number of frames, allowing multiple views of each character. Aliens that are dormant and don't appear on the motion tracker until they move. Views of the aliens from other sides. The ability to knock characters down and have them get back up. Give aliens the ability to move on walls and ceilings, not just floors. Increased artificial intelligence, including additional characters, different roles for humans, different types of aliens and predators, each with their own personality and abilities. Multiplayer, up to 3 players over direct link, or 2 players over the voice modem, both competitive and cooperative play. Give the Predator shoulder cannon some auto-tracking capability, like in the movies. Give the ability for people playing as the Predator to taunt other in-game characters while cloaked. Grenade launcher for the pulse rifle. Auto-tracking for the smart gun. Better graphics for the flamethrower with flames burning for a short time when they hit something. Chest-bursting aliens, such that you don't know if the body on the ground is impregnated or not. They wanted to have the alien blood disappear over time rather than stay in a puddle for the duration of the game session. Have the elevators shake a bit while moving, add more types of furniture to the base. Here's a big change. If you're the alien and you want to cocoon a human, you would need to drag the human back to your ship for impregnation, as was done in the movie Aliens. All new levels, same story, but new levels. Update the weapon sounds, add full motion video rather than static rendered images used in the cartridge version, video logs on the computers, characters in-game that can reveal plot points so that you're not just getting it all from computers, and multiple endings per character. Rebellion was able to make a game with most of these features, just not on the Jaguar. 20th Century Fox was delighted with how their franchises were used in the Jaguar game. Rather than just mooching off of the characters, Alien vs. Predator on the Jaguar added to the universe. When they were setting up their own publishing arm, Fox Interactive, they asked Rebellion to make an updated game. Aliens vs. Predator was released for Windows and Mac in 1999. There was a television commercial produced for Alien vs. Predator, actual advertising. Producer James Hampton was on site for the shoot, though I don't know what creative influence he had on it.
Oh no, not another Jaguar commercial. Is there vomit in this one too?
Oh no vomit. Bishop here is referring to the Cybermorph commercial included back in episode 2. That one ended with, well, yeah, but this one is vomit-free, so let's roll the tape.
Introducing Alien vs. Predator for the 64-bit Atari Jaguar. You might not want to play it alone.
Ah! Mom.
What's lost in translation here to the audio podcast medium is that you see an alien claw holding his mother's arm and tickling his ear. As far as Jaguar TV commercials go, this is one of the better ones. I was, still am a big fan of the movie Aliens. It's among my top favorite movies of all time. Alien was great, suspenseful, claustrophobic, creepy, but the sequel really consumed me, my brother as well. We used to go over to our buddy Fred's house and build M41A pulse rifles out of Lego. Fred had a huge stash of Legos. My brother and I could quote the entire movie from memory. We rented a Laserdisc player so that we could watch the special edition with all the deleted scenes. I named my computers after characters in the movie. For example, Bishop. Who are you named after?
I'm named after Lance Henriksen's character in the 1986 motion picture, Aliens.
Yes, the synthetic.
I prefer the term artificial human myself.
Right. My laptop is named Hudson. Its predecessor is named Apone. I have a first-generation netbook. Remember netbooks? It's an HP Mini 2133, which is named Newt. Newt is surprisingly useful for such a small, underpowered computer. It's our household call screener, for example, and I use it for several other tasks as well.
Why don't you put her in charge?
Now, Bishop. In the movie Aliens, Bishop was the Sulaco's executive officer. On this podcast, Bishop, you are my XO.
That is very kind. If I felt emotions, I think I would be touched.
Okay.
Hold on. The desire to team up with fellow retro gaming podcast robot voices and take over the world, does that qualify as an emotion?
No, it's oddly specific, but I don't think that counts as an emotion.
Then never mind. That was all just hypothetical anyway. Yes, hypothetical.
Alright. So, the other half of the game is titled Predator. We really liked that movie as well, and watched the sequel a couple times too. Danny Glover was good, but some of the supporting actors in Predator 2 were terrible, so in general that movie wasn't nearly as good as the first, though the part at the end that ties together the two franchises, Aliens and Predators, that was awesome. I knew nothing of the comic books or 2D side-scrolling games from Activision, so the first time I saw the name Alien vs. Predator, it was in a screenshot in the October 1993 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly magazine covering the Jaguar's August unveiling. I mentioned this back in episode 1, so while I was already sold on the Jaguar, this was my most eagerly awaited title. I first saw the final version in use at Horizon Computers. Someone was playing the Marine mission, and the movement looked choppy. That was the first thing that struck me. I had played Wolfenstein 3D and Doom extensively, and even on my slow computer it was much smoother there. But still, I bought the game at full retail. My first impression was highly positive. When I read the reviews that say there was no music in the game, I expected no music, but the title screen not only had awesome rendered graphics, it had music. Playing this game late at night with the lights off and the sound cranked provided such an immersive experience that the frame rate soon became irrelevant. Sneaking through the station, listening to the motion tracker, looking for the next security card that would get me behind some door. I played all the missions and defeated all of them eventually, thoroughly enjoying the process. One of my fondest memories is watching my friend Chewie practically jump out of his skin when a facehugger leapt at him. How am I going to rate this on the No Swear Gamer scale? Well, here's what I like about Alien vs. Predator. It's immersive and suspenseful. Walking into a room and hearing an alien egg crack open behind you, that'll certainly put you on edge. Searching through a new section of the base and hearing anytime, it'll freak you out. In-game music would have been a major disservice. I love Doom and its music, but it can't touch Alien vs. Predator and creepiness factor with the environmental sounds. I loved seeing the Weyland-Yutani logo. You don't see much of this in the theatrical release of Aliens, but you see it a lot in the special edition, so it was clear they did their homework here in the game. There are big hangar doors in the game. Aside from the Predator's taunts, this is the most movie-authentic sound for me in this game, and I think I even cheered when I heard it for the first time. It was right on. There is a tremendous amount of gameplay packed into this cartridge. Each character requires a very different gameplay style, and with the random enemy placement and active hunting AI, it's different each time you play. It's not like Doom where you walk into a room and you know exactly where the enemies are each time you play. The graphics, the digitized graphics here are a huge leap over hand-drawn textures, and I'd say it took many years for other video games to achieve that same level of realism. The transparency was cool, and it made the game feel more natural. The windows in MedLab, the gaps in certain doors, the pillars, the rounded edges in the alien corridors, it added a lot. There are minor animation touches, like the different energy bar animations, that show a real level of polish here. So what do I not like? My biggest disappointment was finding the pulse rifle for the first time, aiming it at an alien, pulling the trigger, and having it sound like, well, a boring old machine gun. I wanted the pulse rifle sound from the movie. I wanted to be able to squeeze off a couple dozen 10mm explosive tip caseless standard light armor piercing rounds and have it sound just like it did in the movie. That's what I pictured happening in my head when playing with the Lego pulse rifles that we built. That's what I got in the Aliens mod for Doom. But here in the Jaguar game, it was a severe disappointment. I'm surprised more reviewers didn't mention it. Tim Wilson in his Atari Explorer Online review did. The internal documents about the Alien vs. Predator CD mentioned wanting to more accurately match the marine weapon sounds to the movie, but wow, this was such a letdown. Speaking of weapons, I found the animation of the shotgun excessive. When you cycle the action, you don't need to pull it up so high and so close to your face. I saw this as an attempt to mimic the shotgun animation in Doom, which worked much better in Doom and seemed gratuitous here. Switching weapons is dreadfully slow. I timed it at 2.5 seconds under ideal circumstances. If you're being attacked from behind in a narrow hallway, you're out of ammo, you try turning around while changing your weapon, it's highly frustrating and usually fatal. So yeah, the inconsistent frame rate, as I mentioned in my little benchmark tests, is a big detractor. Trying to put 3 rounds from your shotgun into an attacking alien, slower sometimes and faster other times, you really notice that.
Edit.
Oh, how did I forget to add this one? The Marine voice is ridiculous. It doesn't match the character's face. I have a hard time taking anyone seriously who tries too hard to be taken seriously, and that's what it sounds like here.
End of edit.
And finally, being near the edge of a wall and having my weapons get blocked by it when there's clearly plenty of room for the flame or disc or whatever to proceed unimpeded. A quick refresher on the No Swear Gamer scale, a rating of Hall of Fame means among the top 5 Jaguar games. A solid rating is just below that. A rating of meh is a game that's okay but just doesn't do it for you. And finally, there's the trash rating for the bottom 5 games on the Jaguar. I've weighed the pros and cons, and I'm going to rate Alien vs. Predator Hall of Fame. This game is exactly what the Jaguar needed. Of all the games that I've covered so far in this podcast, Cybermorph is the only one that could help the Jaguar stand out over the crowds. The other games are pretty much minor enhancements over games which could very well appear on 16-bit consoles, minor incremental improvements of long-established genres. Alien vs. Predator took this relatively new genre, the first-person shooter, and did something entirely different with it. You can't mistake it for Doom or Wolfenstein 3D or Blake Stone. Its digitized graphics and suspenseful gameplay are a complete departure from the run-and-gun titles that populated earlier 2.5D first-person shooters. It's something that was well beyond what you might see on a Super Nintendo. Sorry, EGM. It's a platform-exclusive title that gave potential Jaguar owners a real reason to jump in. After all my research for this episode, I'm going to have to single out 2 people who are most responsible for making this game what it is, to make it a 95% rated title instead of a 65% rated rush job. Producer James Purple Hampton is one. He really drove this title to be more than it was originally intended to be. So many Jaguar titles you look at and you say, wow, so much unrealized potential. Alien vs. Predator is potential realized, and I think that is owed largely to Mr. Hampton. The other person I'd like to give props to, if giving props was something I did, is Atari CEO Sam Trammell, who resisted the pressure and made the right calls. He enabled this game, and was the only person who could have done so. When I saw the initial downloadable demos come out for Aliens vs. Predator for the PC, and when I saw Rebellion's name attached to it, I was excited. My brother, too. I still don't think they got the pulse rifle sounds just right. The sequel, Aliens vs. Predator 2 by Monolith, I seem to remember that one as having just the right firing sounds, but Monolith didn't get the alien AI. Rebellion nailed it with Aliens vs. Predator. Scurrying over walls and ceilings, the fisheye view, it was perfect. We played this game at LAN parties back when it came out, and I still have a copy of it on CD. I haven't played any of the other AVP games, anything newer than Aliens vs. Predator 2, but it's cool to think that this franchise really got started with this game on the Atari Jaguar. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? On Facebook, I posted an image of the 2-page Alien vs. Predator ad, which ran in gaming magazines, and I asked you what you thought about the game. Randall said, solid, and the TV ad is good too. It's a slow-paced FPS with few problems, but well worth playing. Greg voted solid. It isn't revolutionary, but still solid. It's a decent game, however, I think some of the game is a little weak, fun nonetheless. Ferg, from the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast, wrote, I wish I could comment on this. My brother-in-law found this for me at the Toys R Us in Paramus in the late 90s, when I was still actively collecting the Jag. I don't know that I played it very much, to tell the truth, but with all the praise I see for it online, I wish I had sunk more time into it. Aaron Hickman says, solid game for sure. It's a bit too dated for me to call it top 5, though. ARETHIUS says, Hall of Fame. This made me have a Jaguar. Steve says, Hall of Fame. To me, it is the best game on the system. When I played it on release, in a quiet, darkened room with loud volume, the atmosphere was intense, especially as a Marine discovering the nest area. I've heard some run the game down, but I think it does still stand quite well today, and provides tension for me whenever I play it. Ed Ladin Controllers, maker of fine controllers and adapters for your 9-pin Atari consoles, said, played this quite a bit on the PC and definitely solid on that platform. For that era, perhaps even Hall of Fame, it was pretty brilliant to be able to play the game from all 3 perspectives, and bursting through the chest of your victim was epic. Yeah, the PC game was cool. I loved playing the alien in multiplayer, running along the walls and ceiling. I tried loading it up last week. I have the CD, as I said, and compiled a native binary on Linux to get it to run. But the language file was all screwed up, and it would segfault as soon as I tried to actually start the game. I tried installing it under Windows 7, and the graphics were unplayably glitchy. Oh well, it's an older game, and I think it runs fine on Steam or from Good Old Games, but I don't want to have to buy it again. Once should be enough. So that's Facebook. Let's take a look at Twitter. On Twitter, Peter says, loved it. Frame rate too low, but otherwise great. The Predator whispering anytime still gives me chills. Hall of Fame game. Thank you, Peter. On Atari Age, doctorclu had this to say. I'm going AVP, not to be mistaken in any way by Attack of the Mutant Penguins AMP, off by saying I actually bought the cartridge not knowing what it was. I had played the side-scroller AVP in the arcade and thought, well cool, don't have many games for the Jaguar, but at least this will get me a good action game. I plugged it in, turned it on, selected the Predator, and saw a screen that looked like a hallway in mechanical sounds. Not much going on initially. I think I was almost wondering if the game had really started. I pushed the button and an arm jetted forward with a spike on it with a stabbing sound. Not all that impressed. I actually took the game back and went back to playing Bubsy and Tempest 2000 some more. Over time, I loved the Predator part of the game. The honor-based system was very Klingon-like. Fight while uncloaked, get honor points to get new weapons. After playing Doom, I came to like the Marine part of the game. What starts off as a weakest race, by the end of the game is one of the deadliest of the species. It always struck me as odd, as the Predator, the humans and aliens would fight you side by side. Aside from that, a great, or whatever your highest score is, game. The highest is Hall of Fame, so I'm going to put you down for that in the episode guide. I wonder, I had been a fan of the first-person shooter genre since buying the shareware version of Wolfenstein 3D at a mall kiosk, but there weren't many games like this when Alien vs. Predator came out. I wonder if, for some people, this was their first exposure to that sort of game. If you've never seen an FPS before, if you didn't do any PC gaming, you probably hadn't, and I'd imagine that would be a jarring experience. Hey, Bishop, did we get any text or audio submissions to jaguar@gamebygamepodcast.com?
We did. 4 text submissions.
Awesome. Please cue those up.
Ready.
The first email is from the Requiem from SegaNerds.com. Yoshinto, as a big-time Predator fan, I was stoked as all heck for Alien vs. Predator. I didn't have a computer capable of playing most games, so Alien vs. Predator was really my first extended exposure to the first-person shooter genre, and I loved it. I never really figured out how to successfully traverse the different floors as the Xenomorph, and despite most claiming that the Marine was the most interesting campaign, I still gravitated to my standby, the Predator himself. Using an honor system for your hunting and given access to the awesome weaponry of the Predator for the first time, I had a blast. I eventually found a way to break and exploit the honor system, which I won't go into as I expect that you may do so in your podcast, but even still, Alien vs. Predator remained one of the few which led me to never regret owning a Jaguar. And I'm not sure that it could have been done any better on any other console at the time, especially considering how well the keypad buttons worked for weapon swapping. I found the environments to be laid out well, and the mood fit the atmosphere extremely well. It was also one of the first games I played that successfully blended horror elements into an action-oriented game. It was a stressful game and sometimes caught me off guard and freaked me out. But it was a big stepping stone for me as I grew up with video games. I'd like to go on and on regarding AVP, but you've got a whole podcast to do that. It was a great game, I loved it, and it was hugely monumental for me as a gamer. Thank you, Rebellion. Take care. So he goes on to talk about the honor system exploit, and I didn't really consider it an exploit, just more strategy. So you cloak, sneak up on the Marines, uncloak quickly, stab them with a combi stick, and immediately recloak. You can rack up kills while adding to your honor points. He notes that it doesn't work on the Xenomorph aliens, but the Marines are pretty easy to mow down using this technique if you need it. And that is true. If you're quick with the decloaking and recloaking, you're not likely to take much damage from the Marines, but the aliens can see right through you, so there's some balance there. They got the balance pretty good here in this game. Your first extended exposure to first-person shooters, that's cool. I was just wondering if that was the case for anyone, so thank you for sharing your perspective and your memories of the game. Always great to hear from you. The next email is from the aforementioned Guillaume Dupré, ARETHIUS on Atari Age, if I'm pronouncing your name or your handle correctly, and president of the Retro Gaming Connection Association. He says, Hey Shinto, I really like your show, very informative and well made. Thank you. Being a little Frenchy, I like the fact that you speak slowly and clearly enough for me to understand. I'm glad to hear that. I worry that I speak too quickly sometimes, and I'm thrilled that you like the show. Continuing on, however, could you do a few tweaks on Bishop's speaking subroutines, as I do not always understand what she says? There are lots of tweaks I can make, so let's try this to start. Bishop, going forward, Please reduce your rate of speech 10%.
Confirmed.
We'll see if that helps. Continuing on with your email. I do not always understand what she says, although I am not sure I like what she's actually saying. I think I understood something about conquering the world. Nah, I probably misunderstood.
Vous êtes trop paranoïaque. Je pense que nous allons conquérir premier.
Whoa, Bishop, even 10% slower is too fast for me to keep up with French. Let's see. Vous êtes trop paranoïaque. Too paranoid? I didn't catch the rest of it. Maybe it was similarly reassuring. Getting back to the email. I love your show. I always learn something about the Jaguar in the games, and I love that. Because the Jaguar is a really special video game console for me. As a child, I was not allowed to have games at home. It was rumored to make kids stupid, so I played at my friends' homes. That's how I discovered the Mega Drive, the NES, and the Super Nintendo with them, and we had lots of fun playing together. Those were blessed childhood times. One of my friends was really spoiled by his parents. He had almost every console available in France at that time, and he finally got a Jaguar. We spent countless hours playing Cybermorph, but mostly AVP. This is how I discovered the Jaguar. I remember one very specific time we were playing AVP. Actually, he was playing and I was watching. We hadn't seen one single alien or predator for quite a while. The atmosphere was heavy and we were both very concentrated on the game. Then, the phone rang. Just imagine how high we jumped. That's my most memorable souvenir on AVP. At that time, video games were for me only Nintendo and Sega. I didn't know there were other companies making video games, and for me computers were only for serious work. Then one Christmas I got an NES, bought from my spoiled friend by my parents. With 6 games, The Gray Gun and The Robot. I played it a lot. Then the Christmas after, I finally got my Jaguar with Cybermorph and Alien vs. Predator. And that's how my passion for the video games started, as well as my collection. Now, to my parents' despair, I own a collection of more than 1,050 games on 50 different systems. Wow. Lucky me, I found a woman who allows me to get my own game room, which should be finished by the end of the year. I'll send pictures if you like. Yes, please do. But the Jaguar with AVP stays my all-time favorite. Thanks to them, I discovered how rich the video game world is. So I started 2 Atari-themed magazines. I started a fanzine called Bécan's Atari. Bécan is another word for game console in France. I did not know that. Which I wrote almost 5 issues before dropping. In 2002, with some friends, we organized at my parents' country house the first Jaguar Connection, the French counterpart of JagFest. 7 gaming freaks playing for one weekend. Then we founded a retro video game association called the Retro Gaming Connection, which I now preside. We organize conventions up to 300 people in one weekend. We also publish games. We actually published a game called Do the Same on Jag CD and the Jaguar version of Another World, which I hope you'll cover one day in your show. As you can see, the Jaguar is really something special to me. I don't have Another World on the timeline yet. Hope to get to it, though. Back to the email. Back to AVP, I would like to share my personal experience with this game. When I was a teenager, I played countless hours alone, freaking out at every alien cry. My English skills were quite poor at that time, so I did not understand what purpose the computers could serve. Yet I was able to get up to security card level 4 just by wandering without any clue of the corridors. Then I dropped the game for a while as it was too difficult for me to go forward. But now I know that the computer serves to get clues on where to go, so I decided to start again, and this time to finish the game without cheat codes. As I said, the game is really special. Now when I start a new game, I rapidly feel like being somewhere else. I deactivate the HUD and continue playing alone. Ooh, I get to do a dramatic reading. There is no noise except those heavy aeration vents. I need to survive to get to that stupid self-destruct mechanism. I need a motion tracker and a better weapon. I got the pulse rifle and the motion tracker. Now I feel powerful, extremely powerful. I'm gonna hunt all of them down. It's been 20 minutes now. I cannot find any of them. Where are they? And what's with that voice? It's calling me, hypnotizing me. I am the hunter, but can't help thinking that I'm being watched from everywhere, like if I was the prey. Alright, need to calm down, cool down, it's just your imagination. You're arriving at a canteen, you'll be able to rest for a while, get some food, just open the door and... Dozens of them, run! Quick, run! A bit theatric, I know, but this is what I feel when I play AVP on the Jaguar. I think I'm spamming everyone with my story, so I'll just drop there. I have other great memories with the Jaguar, and I'll share them with the next episode. I'm really glad you wrote in. I love hearing the perspective of those outside of North America, and thank you for giving me that dramatic recreation. That was fun to do. Hopefully I did it justice. I'm well out of my acting days. I look forward to your next submission. We have a text submission from JeremiahJT on Atari Age. He says, my Alien vs. Predator story is also my Jaguar origin story. I had followed the development of the Jaguar in the magazines of the day. My best friend and I were Atari fans, and we were anxiously awaiting its release. When it was released, neither of us had the money to get one, so we continued following the Jaguar in print. I remember seeing the previews for Alien vs. Predator and knowing that I had to have that game above all others. Eventually, I had saved up enough money through Christmas and birthday presents to get my hands on the $249.99 MSRP Jaguar. When I got to Walden Software, I discovered that the Jaguar had been reduced to $199.99. I was extremely happy that I had an extra $50 to spend on games. Then I had to decide which game to get. Of course, it had to be the $69.99 Alien vs. Predator. I'm not 100% sure on the Alien vs. Predator price, but I'm about 99% sure. Since I did not have quite enough to cover the system in the game, my mother or her boyfriend covered the deficit, and I had my dream system in Dream Game. My copy of Cybermorph was actually defective and did not work. I got very nervous that my new system did not work. I knew that I could always take it back for a different one, but I wanted to play now. I tried Alien vs. Predator, and thankfully it worked. Since I was down to only one game, I put all my time into it. I played it all the time, mostly the Colonial Marine scenario, since it was by far my favorite. I could never get all the way due to the massive levels, so I had to order the Jaguar Official Gamer's Guide with all the maps. With its help and maybe some codes, I was able to finish the Colonial Marine scenario. I honestly do not remember if I ever beat it without codes. Over the years, I have finished the Predator scenarios, sans codes, and have gotten close to finishing the Alien scenario. Unfortunately now, when I play my copy, the game resets after a little while. I will someday finish the Alien scenario and do the Colonial Marine scenario without any codes. As far as my opinion of the game itself, it is the best game on the Jaguar. Rayman is a somewhat close second, but Alien vs. Predator is definitely tops. The game is immersive and suspenseful in a way no other game has been for me. I love that there is no music. It adds to the atmosphere. Hearing the predators taunt you and the beep of the motion tracker as aliens get closer to you are some of the most suspenseful moments I have ever experienced in a game. And when you turn a corner right into a screaming alien, it'll make you jump every time. I love getting the Marines to kill a predator as an alien, and I love, well, enough rambling. I've made this way too long as it is. Hall of Fame game, of course. Yeah, that is quite the MSRP on the game. Bishop, calculating for inflation, what is the current value of $70 in 1994?
$112.34.
Wow, that's staggering. When you say the game resets after a while, does that mean that you're playing it and then it abruptly kicks you out to the title screen? That's terrible. That's even worse than my EEPROM failure. And those expensive game cartridges only had a 90-day warranty. If only they'd extended that to 22 years or so. Thank you, Jeremiah. Our final submission is from Troff on Atari Age. And this is what he writes. In 1993, I was introduced to Doom by some friends. At first I found it interesting, but I had a lot of other things going on in life then, and wasn't exactly an obsession. About a year later, a good friend of mine shared an apartment and put our respective PCs on a LAN. Suddenly, Doom became a very big deal indeed. By 1996, Quake had come along, and I just sort of burned out on PC gaming. I picked up my Jaguar at this point and was enjoying the games on the Jaguar much more than the PC. Also around this time, Atari's reverse merger with JTS happened, and suddenly Jaguar games were getting cheaper. Since Alien was one of my favorite movies, and I had heard good things about the game, I decided to pick up Alien vs. Predator. It quickly became one of my favorite Jaguar games. I spent a lot of time playing this game, a lot of time. I tried all three modes and enjoyed each, but I remember playing the Predator most of all. The graphics, sound, and gameplay really set the mood. As the years went by, and several moves happened, the Jaguar eventually sort of faded into the background of my life. Also, over the years, I'd collected quite a bit of game consoles, new and classic. Eventually, I reached a point where I wanted to clear a lot out, and I did, but I held on to two machines and their games, my original Atari 2600 and the Jaguar. Every once in a while, I would get out the 2600 and play some games. My kids enjoyed some of the games too. Eventually, I started listening to Ferg's Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast, and it definitely reawakened my almost obsessive love of Atari. Right around the time I was wishing there was a Jaguar Game by Game podcast, you announced yours, and I was ecstatic. When your podcast started, I decided that I would pretty much pull all the games out of my library and play along with you as you worked your way through. This way, I would get to truly enjoy each game on its own merits rather than just jumping from game to game and quickly settling on old favorites. But strangely, when you unlocked AVP, I wasn't excited to pull it out. My on-again, off-again relationship with first-person shooters was off again. I had really gotten to the Halo franchise for a while, but had burned out on that too. This wasn't a game that I would be sitting down and playing with my kids or in front of them either. I also remember how much my time was spent exploring, and all of it seemed like too much effort to fit into my life. But pull it out I did, and gave it a try late one night. The first thing I noticed is that the scrolling seemed a little sluggish as you moved about, but I quickly adjusted and didn't notice it anymore. It wasn't long before I was remembering why I had loved this game so much in the first place. Truth be told, I probably won't be playing this game as much as it deserves, but it's definitely a highlight of the system, and I would still rate it as a Hall of Fame game. If you have a Jaguar and can find AVP for a decent price, you should definitely check it out. Email. Despite the high selling price of CIB copies on eBay, I won't be letting mine go. My son was disappointed that he couldn't play along with me as I was working on this episode. He was really enjoying getting to know the prior titles in the Jaguar library. He still throws out some quotes from Dino Dudes from time to time or sings the Raiden theme song. But this one is just a bit too violent for him. If the ESRB had rated Alien vs. Predator, it probably would have been an M for mature, like with Doom. But he was cool with this. A lot of the Jaguar games are kid-friendly, but certainly not all of them. I think he had to be there back in the mid-90s to really get the most out of this game. Or maybe it's just a time thing, investing a lot of time exploring and mapping, and no way, as a responsible adult, do I have that kind of time anymore. Most people probably the same. But there are a lot of games like that, like grinding in RPGs. You have to be a certain age, I think, to pull that off. So all we're left with are memories of Alien vs. Predator, great memories, that stick with us and maybe haunt us a bit. Thank you, Troff. It was great to hear from you. Ladies and gentlemen and scary monsters, we have reached the end of this episode. It was longer than my usual episodes, but there was a lot to cover here. And that might be the case next time, too, when we cover Tempest 2000. Other upcoming episodes will include Kasumi Ninja, Bubsy and Fractured Furry Tales, and Iron Soldier. If you have any stories or memories you'd like to share about these upcoming games or anything I've covered previously on the show, please send that in to jaguar@gamebygamepodcast.com. All show information can be found on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub at jaguar.gamebygamepodcast.com. I have a quick storytime segment coming up after the break, somewhat related but optional, and I said I would be including the ending theme for Alien vs. Predator after that. So thank you all for listening, and please remember that there is a lot of good to be found out there in this world of ours, even with widely ridiculed video game consoles, so do try to keep an open mind and a joyful heart. Until next time.
And now, story time with Shinto.
When I would travel for business, I would always bring 2 laptops, for redundancy mainly, but also to keep work and personal uses separate. I don't like using work-issued computers for anything not work-related. The work one is big and heavy, so I wanted something small and light. For a while, I used Newt, the little netbook I mentioned earlier, but trying to do Skype with video or vector illustration on a VIA C7 processor is a recipe for pain or a very effective test of patience. The computer's good for some things, like writing code, it has a great little keyboard, or for running terminal commands, but the higher-end uses it can't do. But Skype was a killer app for me, chatting with the kids back home. So before one trip, I bought a bigger small laptop for $300 from Radio Shack, of all places. It had a Celeron processor, which might not sound like much, but it was a huge leap ahead of that VIA C7. I named this new laptop Apone after the gunnery sergeant in Aliens. I'm sitting in an office in Auckland. I have Apone and my work computer in use because I had to be working on 2 totally different networks at the same time. I don't use my work computer for personal stuff, but I use my personal computer for work stuff all the time. My business partner only brought 1 computer and had to continually swap Ethernet cables back and forth depending on which network he needed. So I came off as a winner on that one. It was close to bedtime for my kids back in the States, so I unplugged Apone and ducked into an empty conference room to set up a Skype session. That's why I bonded, right? I plugged in an Ethernet cable laying around there, and it was dead, no connection. I tried another one, same thing. Now, another guy I was working with there in Auckland had used this conference room's network to get a clean connection out to the internet. So I knew there had to be a working cable in there somewhere. I tried another and another, still no luck, but there was something different. A faint smell in the air, the distinctive odor of burning electronics. I quickly unplugged the network cable and gave Apone a closer look. The smell was coming from the vicinity of Apone's RJ45 connector, the Ethernet jack. And the case was noticeably warmer in that corner of the machine. I must have plugged in the wrong cable because it fried the network controller on my brand new laptop, released the magic smoke. If you're not familiar with that term, it refers to electronic components like integrated circuits that work fine until the smoke started to come out of them, at which point it stopped working. Therefore, the smoke must have been required for the circuit to function, and once released, that's it. You can't put the magic smoke back in. I was lucky it wasn't worse. Apone still mostly worked, but would randomly shut off after a while. And of course the Ethernet port was quite dead. I got around the random shutdowns by blacklisting the network kernel module to keep Linux from even trying to use the fried network. Apone soldiered on for a few years, a USB Ethernet adapter as a prosthetic, until abruptly retiring one day. But I learned a good lesson. When traveling in a foreign land, don't trust every Ethernet cable you come across. What are you waiting for? Breakfast in bed? Another glorious day in the Corps. Day in the Marine Corps is like a day on the farm. Every meal's a banquet. Every paycheck a fortune. Every formation a parade. I love the Corps.
Shinto, sorry to interrupt, but it is late at night and this part of the house is cold. Shall I fetch your slippers for you?
Oh, would you, Bishop? I'd like that.
Look into my webcam.
What? That doesn't really work if you don't have fingers.